Now, one of the things that has come up in some of my discussions with clients is that, they've always paid their client in this currency. They know that their client is, of course, hedging their purchase price or their selling price, say on an import, there's their selling price based on fees in the foreign exchange, and maybe using it as a profit center for themselves. How would you recommend a company go about, one, researching this, and two, approaching that vendor overseas regarding that foreign exchange?
Yeah, we see that situation quite a bit. And what we advise typically for the U.S. company to explore is the idea that if the U.S. company is receiving invoices from Germany, just to pick a country, and they're denominated in U.S. dollars, what we recommend is that the U.S. company inquire if the overseas supplier would prefer to be paid in euros, as an example. Oftentimes what we find is that the overseas company can then better, match their internal payables that they have for their workers, their plant, their equipment, etc. That is really in euros versus, receiving instead of dollars, euros in terms of their receivable. So oftentimes what we find is that the European companies would prefer to deal with their home currency, just as U.S. companies would. Now, having said that, there might be the situation that you described, Kevin, where the overseas company is managing the risk in such a way that they're comfortable. And there is a case to be made that often, European companies, as an example, are more comfortable with dealing with foreign exchange risk than some smaller to medium-sized U.S. companies. And I think that comes from the history in Europe where, now they're all euro, or not all, but many are euro, versus before where there was, 19 different currencies involved. So there was always the constant, variation of, receivable in one currency, payable in another, led to a, perhaps European ability to better manage exchange rate risks than perhaps U.S. companies. Now, having said that, I think there are many European companies that would prefer just the deal in the euro. So that would be a question for the U.S. company to inquire, is if the euro would be, a more, easier or an easier currency for the payable to be in. Now, then what we often find, the U.S. company then saying, well, is it going to be more expensive for me to pay in euro, or is it going to be less expensive for me to pay in euro? And sometimes what we've seen is an exploration of the U.S. company then saying, well, can you send me an invoice in both? So if I pay in U.S. dollars, this is the amount of U.S. dollars. If I pay in euros, this is the amount of euros. So then we can, aid the U.S. company explore, well, if you need to make this euro payable, we can tell you how many U.S. dollars that's going to be. And then you can compare each U.S. dollar amount to see which is cheaper for you.
Excellent.